Welcome, everybody, to Fan Counters. I'm Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And this is the podcast where celebrities are going to be telling us about their encounters with their fans and other celebrities they've worked with. So why do a podcast? Why should you care? Well, we're going to have some pretty awesome celebrities coming up in the next few months that are going to have some good stories for you. And the reason why I selected to do a podcast is I have 2 5-year-olds at home, and nobody listens to me in my house. So this is a way that I can just talk and hope somebody's listening on the other end.
We're all listening, sweetheart. Don't worry.
So I've got a background in radio. I've done short films, feature films. I have a web series. You can look up Life on Our Own on YouTube, and you can watch the web series that I did. It was a 10-episode thing. It was fun. But this seemed like the next progression for me to kind of bring it all together. So that's why I'm here.
Well, fantastic. I'm the mother of 2. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I needed an excuse to talk to other people.
And get out of the house.
I
can understand that. So anyway, this week we've got an actor who's been around in Hollywood for 4 decades. Michael McGrady. He's been a working actor, and he's worked with some of Hollywood's best people like
Nicolas Cage, John Goodman, Louis Gossett Jr., Kevin Costner, and Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, he can currently be seen playing Agent Frank Barnes on Showtime's Ray Donovan, and he's also starring on the hit Freeform series Beyond, which he just wrapped season 2, and that comes back to TV in January of 2018. So you ready?
Looking forward to it.
Let's do this.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fan Counters, the podcast.
There was this mob of people that were on the sidewalk that were being held back by a couple of police officers, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
And he tried to pick a fight with me.
Are you kidding me?
Something came into the makeup trailer, and the trailer dropped like a foot.
Oh, my goodness.
You don't know where those pictures are going to end up.
Oh, I don't want to go there. That's why we call it Fan Counters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Welcoming Michael McGrady. How are you today?
Great. How are you guys doing?
We're well, thanks.
Very good. We know that you're a huge fan of the arts. You paint, sculpt, obviously a big acting career, and also you're in a band. So being a fellow lover of the arts, we want to thank you by joining our podcast. You're our very first guest.
Yay!
Oh, wow. That's great.
Thank you.
The inaugural voyage. That's terrific.
Yeah, it's exciting. So let's get started with learning a little bit more about you. Grew up in Washington State, pretty much living a fairly normal life. You graduate high school. You enroll at Washington State, but you didn't major in theater.
No. University of Washington.
Oh, sorry. University.
That's okay. Washington State is actually that's our rivals.
Oh, I don't want to go there. Sorry. So you didn't major in theater or film or anything. Tell me a little bit about your choice at that time.
I was majoring in business. I had an uncle who was CEO of a fairly large corporation in the Northwest who, more or less encouraged me to get a business degree. And then I was thinking about going into law school, and there was a possibility of me having a job when I got out of law school as a junior counsel for his company. And, it all looked very respectable. It looked very responsible and whatnot. But, I don't know how much homework you guys did on this, but I had a skin cancer when I was 19. I just finished up my first year of college at University of Cincinnati. My father had died of it when I was 18. Mm-hmm. And the prospect of going to school another 4 years by the time I hit my senior year just didn't sit right with me. The doctors more or less told me that, there was a 50-50 chance that I'd even see the age of 23. So I saw no point in continuing my business pursuits and possibly going to law school and all that. So I decided, well, let me take some time out, and I can always go back to school. And my sister actually had been the one who encouraged me to pursue acting. Again, I did it in junior high. I didn't do it in high school because I was in sports and, football and track and all the different sports, so I didn't have time for it. So on her bidding, I went to this, Seattle was doing this, they had this talk show called Seattle Today. It was a morning talk show, and they were doing this scholarship for this new acting school that was starting up in Seattle. And so I went down there, sort of on a whim and try it out for it. There were hundreds of people that went down there that had, many more credits and background than I did. And I was shocked, actually. They only had 4 spots, scholarships, and they gave me one. And I only spent like a few months there, a couple months there, and got bored with it, and decided in 1983 that I wanted to move down to LA and pursue it down here. And I gave myself 1 year, and I thought, well, okay, if I can't do it in a year, there's no point. Might as well go back to school and get my law degree and go that plan A.
Right.
But plan B turned into plan A very quickly. When I first moved down here, I got work right away.
Right.
Got agents pretty quickly,
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, this is the 1980s, so there's no Google, there's no, social networking and
You don't
all
even
that.
have a cell phone.
So
No, there was no cell phones. There was none of that. In fact, you know what? Get this, guys. There was only 4 networks, really. I mean, there was
it was all the majors.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you had Fox, you had ABC, NBC, and CBS. And
Right.
I think HBO was coming on the scene back then, but that's it. And so the competition was really rough. I mean, it wasn't that much work out there.
So how did you get noticed?
Very, very fortunate. It's funny. It's an interesting thing. It's kind of a long journey. It's a long story, and I'll give you kind of the Cliff Note version. But my life has always kind of been this way. It seems like whenever I set a path, I just sort of have always opened myself up to the possibilities. When doors open, I always say yes. I read a book one time, a long time ago, that said something about if you're constantly saying no, don't be surprised if life doesn't say yes to you. And so I started walking through doors, and every door that opened, I figured, well, maybe this will lead through another door. And so I had opportunities to go through those doors, I guess. I actually ended up going to some kind of a meeting of some sort, a fellowship, I think it was, and I met my manager there, who was at the time representing a couple of gold medal athletes and some celebrities and stuff, and we started talking about my pursuits and stuff, and he said, why don't you come down to the office, let's talk. So I went down and talked to him, and he said, John, I want to set you up with a commercial agent and just go in and meet with them. They're one of the best in town. They want to meet you today. I said, great. I ran over there and met with them. They said, hey, we see you've done some rock climbing. They're doing a Sunkist commercial this afternoon, and they're looking for something mountaineering experience. What do you think what do you say you go out on that? Let's see what happens. And so I did, and I ended up booking that national spot.
Oh my God.
Was that an audition, or did they have like the spot ready and they're like, we need an actor?
No, it was an audition. Actually, it was an audition. I went in. I didn't even have any headshots or anything at the time.
Wow.
And I went in there and spoke with the director and talked to him a little bit about my mountaineering experience and some of the stuff I'd done. And he jumped all over. I mean, I don't even think I got home that afternoon and there was a voicemail on my voice machine.
On your answering machine.
Back in the day.
Hey, now,
my
let's
machine.
be nice.
Yeah, I had an answering machine.
And and then from that, actually, they then introduced me to my theatrical agent, who took me on immediately. And then within, I think, a couple of weeks, I did a movie called The Bear, which is a story about Bear Bryant, the coach of Alabama. And what was his? Gary Busey played the Bear and the coach. And I played a guy named Lynn Stallings, who was actually a real coach and a living person at the time. And he in fact was the Cardinals coach for a while. But so I did that movie, and then one thing led to another. So it's kind of a Cinderella story, but I pretty much started working right away.
That's very unusual, even at that time, to just walk into each person that you walk into. Led you to where you ended up in your first film and that commercial.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was kind of a strange story. It's even more convoluted than that, almost unbelievable because I kind of, like I said, I gave you the Cliff Note version, but how this stuff all came about was almost mystical, magical in some kind of a weird way. I just knew then, too, because of the way it happened, I knew I was on the right path for 2 reasons. One, the resources and the people were coming into my life without me necessarily going out and banging down doors. And 2, I really developed a real passion for it and really loved the whole aspect of being on a set and hanging out with new people and different people, creative people. I knew that this was my home and it was going to be my happy place. And it's been for over 30 years now.
Well, I'm going to interject and say, because you do both movies and television, which media do you prefer to do?
There was a time, Elizabeth, where I would say film for sure, because at the time TV was some of the TV in the 80s and 90s wasn't the TV that's going on today. Let's face it, the TV going on now, cable it's better than most films that are being put out there.
Yes.
But back in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't say that. You definitely wanted to do, work in movies, and that was the brass ring everybody was going for. Everybody wanted to be a film actor and a movie star, and so that was kind of the big deal, and everybody was pursuing that, and we kind of looked at TV as a stepping stone to that. If you're able to break free from television, a lot of people just sort of got stuck there and started making money, and they stayed there.
Right.
So at the time, I would have said film, but now, not so much.
Right.
I love working TV. Yeah, I love some of the, Ray Donovan's a great show to work on. I love working on Southland, the show I'm on now, Beyond, I love. And, gosh, we watch TV now. And I keep telling my wife, wasn't that long ago, they would never put up this kind of money for TV.
Right.
Per episode. The kind of money they're spending now with CGI and all that, it's would have been unheard of back then. Real quickly, I did a pilot for Francis Ford Coppola, his very first foray into TV. It was called The White Dwarf. It was with Neil McDonough. And I played the leader of the dark side on that, and it was his first big deal. And we did the pilot, and it was only, I think it was like $2 million to make it. That's it. And when we got around to getting picked up by the network, I believe it was Fox, said it's way too expensive to make. There's no way we can afford this show. Well, $2 million today for a show is nothing. That's a low budget. And so that tells you how much it's changed. And it was a great show, too. It was fantastic. But, it was too expensive. It just didn't make any sense to them. The bean counters looked at it and said, this makes no sense. We can't make this show. And even though it was Francis Ford Coppola, and it had all marquee players in it and stuff, but that wasn't enough to persuade them.
Wow. Just going back real quick about The Bear, because it was your first role, and I just want a little bit more. How large was that role, and what was the audition process like for you in your first time? What were you thinking and feeling as you walked in there for your first film?
And, I had a lot of confidence when I was younger. When you're facing death, square in the face, not a lot phases you. I figured if I could overcome the cancer, which I relatively had at that time, and I think I had about 4 years under my belt at that point, nothing really intimidated me. So when I went in and met the director, Richard Sarafian, who at the time was a pretty well-known film director, had a pedigree, had quite a history himself, and a long resume. I walked in there. I remember what the scene was, because I played a football player as well in that, because Gene Stallings eventually became his assistant coach, but he was actually one of his players at Texas A&M. And the movie starts off when Bear Bryant's a young man and he grows up, and so it covers a period of time. Well, so in the beginning of the film, I'm a young player, and then I might eventually become his assistant coach. But the audition process, believe it or not, was laying on the floor doing sit-ups while being yelled at by Gary Busey.
Really?
We were having... Yeah, and he's trying to intimidate me to do more. It's kind of like, from Officer and a Gentleman, that scene with Lou Gossett Jr., and he's making him do more push-ups, I think it was, or sit-ups. And he kept saying, yes, sir, like, you're not going to get to me, you're not going to break me down. It was one of those kind of scenes. And I remember we did about 3 or 4 different takes, and by the 4th one, I'm thinking, I can't do another sit-up. No way. I may lose just on physicality alone. They're not going to hire me because I can't do 200 sit-ups. That's crazy. And then as I left the audition, I was thinking, I don't think anybody could do that.
Right. I was just about to say, who could?
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Were you intimidated
So that was it.
by Gary Busey at all? I mean, just walking in and knowing he was a film star and...
Yeah, I was, because he'd done Buddy Holly, and he'd done, he was kind of on really, his star was shining bright at the time. And so, yeah, I was intimidated, and, but he was one of these guys, again, Gary's one of those guys that's like a really nice guy, and he didn't have a star attitude or anything. He took acting very seriously, which I actually admired. He really reveres the craft. And so, I actually saw some aspects of his personality and his character that I actually found very admirable. And So I had a lot of respect for him, but I certainly wasn't intimidated by him. I was hungry too. I really wanted it, and I really wanted this career and profession. So I was open to learn from anybody and everybody. I wasn't out to prove anything, but I certainly was out to learn as much as I could and just give it 100% and see what would happen. So anytime I had an opportunity to audition, I've had to audition in front of some big directors and stuff, but I was never intimidated by it. I was actually very excited to be there, more than anything, and just willing to do, whatever to get the role, I mean, not anything, but of course,
Well, right, yeah.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah, please. Although a lot of that was going on back then, it probably still does. I don't know. I haven't had to do those in years.
So when I look at your resume, and anybody else could, you scroll through the movies, and it seems like you just kept getting yourself in movies with bigger and bigger stars. Helen Hunt, I don't know how big she was in the early 80s before Mad About You, but, she's a big name now. Peter O'Toole, Matthew Broderick, and then, of course, John Goodman in The Babe. Did it seem like that to you as far as like each movie was a bigger and bigger turning point for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when I look back on all that. In fact, I had an interview not too long ago, and I was talking about George C. Scott and Peter O'Toole and Sean Connery and some of the people I've worked with, Angela Lansbury and, Ernest Borgnine and all these. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, dude, you are really dating yourself. I mean, you're going to kids today wouldn't even know who those names are. Anybody who's under 45 wouldn't even know who the hell you were talking about. But of course, back in the day, they were the big names.
They were, yes.
They were the huge names. George, I remember doing a 4 or 5 page courtroom scene on a TV show with George C. Scott. And you talk about intimidating, because I saw him in Patton when I was about 11 or 12 years old.
I was going to say, he's spectacular.
Oh, yeah. I mean, powerful, strong, that voice of his and everything. Yeah. And it was just him and I squaring off in this courtroom scene together. Of course, he made me feel absolutely comfortable by offering me a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer at 6 a.m. that morning. And 3 or 4 beers later, we went in and worked, and it was fantastic. I've never had so much fun in my life and had never been so loose in my life. And I found out at the end of the day that he actually did that on purpose to loosen me up, because he knew I'd be nervous working with him.
Yeah.
A smart guy, very smart man. But yeah, the names kept getting bigger, of course. And I mean, these guys were legends. They still are in a lot of people's minds. Peter O'Toole, to work with a man like that with his background. I mean, come on, he was, Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, he was a big deal. Mm-hmm. All those guys were. Sean Connery, I did one scene with him and Mark Harmon in something called Presidio, and I remember the first time I met him, I was sitting in the makeup trailer and I had my eyes closed because they were doing, makeup and stuff on me, and it was just me and the makeup lady, and all of a sudden something came into the makeup trailer, and the trailer dropped like a foot, and I knew somebody came in of some stature. And I opened up my eyes and I looked over, and it was Sean Connery making a beeline right towards me. He reaches over, shakes my hand, says, "Oh, Michael, Sean Connery, it's a pleasure to meet you," and his rich Scottish accent, and huge guy too. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". I'm a big dude. He made me feel dainty, and he literally asked me if there was anything I needed from craft services. He was going to go get a coffee.
Wow.
And wanted to know if I wanted a coffee or an orange juice. And I'm thinking, come on, you're James Bond. You don't ask me that.
No kidding.
I ask you that.
That's awesome.
But, so these, the thing that's funny, and I tell this to people, these guys that were those legends, like Peter O'Toole, for instance, the first day I met him, the day we were going to work, it was my birthday. He invited me in, again, 6 a.m., to do a couple of whiskey shots with him, with his favorite Irish whiskey. And so we sat there and took a couple of shots, and we talked shop and talked life for an hour and a half before we started getting ready. These guys were approachable. They were huge legends, big stars, but they loved people. They loved actors. They loved collaborating. I never had attitude. But then it seems like nowadays you get with some of the younger stars and younger people, they don't come out of their trailers. They don't say hi to you. There's this almost this not everybody, of course, because I've met some great ones, but there's this entitlement thing. And it's I want to say, I've worked with some legendary people that were more approachable than this. You're missing the point here.
Wow.
You're getting caught up in the trimmings and not the turkey. Because, by the way, all this gloss can fade very quickly. It can come and go, and especially if you don't have the goods to back it up.
Right.
And so when you're working with those big names, I always felt more comfortable and much more appreciated and accepted by them than a lot of the younger stars I work with today. I work with Kevin Costner, another great guy. I mean, Kevin and I got along great, and Dennis Quaid and I got along great, and Wyatt Earp, and John and I actually became friends on The Babe and hung out a lot together because we had to learn how to hit a baseball left-handed because he was also right-handed like me, and so we had to work together a lot with a technical advisor and a batting coach, and at Wrigley
He
Field,
seems
trying
like
to
a
learn
really
how to
fun
bat.
guy, John Goodman. He just seems like he's never lost the laughter. That every job is fun for him. And if I'm correct, he was probably filming Roseanne at the same time, wasn't he?
He had just finished Roseanne. When he did The Babe, his movie career was taken off in a very big way. I think he had already done The Big Lebowski and a couple of other things that really put him on the map. You're absolutely right. He was a great guy and very fun-loving. And we used to go to Hooters at the end of every day of shooting. We'd get so, relaxed, if you will.
Get relaxed, yeah.
We'd be actually doing leg wrestling on the ground and we'd be clearing out the whole bar, and everybody would sit around in a big circle and cheer us on. And he's that kind of a guy, no doubt. We had a couple of all-nighters for sure.
I'm sure that was a sight to see. I'm just picturing it in my mind.
Man on the ground.
So our show is called Fan Counters, and I want to ask you about some of yours. Do you have anything that sticks out in your mind about fans that you thought were funny or things, or even people that you are actually a fan of?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I thought I was kind of prepped a little bit by my reps on that, and I actually had a really weird experience one time. I was in Atlanta. Yeah, I was in Atlanta, and I was shooting a TV series there. The trailers where our dressing rooms were actually across the street from this Italian restaurant where we were shooting the scene. And I had gotten dressed, and I was getting ready to walk across the street, and there was a police officer there escorting all the actors across the street into the restaurant. And as I came out, there was this mob of people that were on the sidewalk that were being held back by a couple of police officers, and they're screaming my name, right? And I looked over, and they all had posters and photographs and pictures, and so I always go over and take a few selfies and sign a few things and whatnot. And so I signed a number of posters and photographs and stuff, and then this one particular individual, he kept handing me more and more pictures, and I kept pushing him away because I'd already signed like a half a dozen of them for him. And whenever I always say, who's it to? And when they say, oh, nobody, just sign it, then I know they're just going to try to sell it on eBay or whatever. So it's not a personal thing. It's a monetary thing. So I don't take it that seriously. In fact, a lot of times I won't even sign it because come on, that's cheesy.
Right.
But I signed this thing. And then there were people that were really, truly wanting to, to Debbie, please, and to Sandra, and to Jim. And so I was doing that. And then I pushed him away, and he got mouthy with me. And I looked at him, and I said, hey, man, I signed like a half a dozen of those for you. You're done. We're done, okay? Be cool. And he goes, no, you be cool. And he tried to pick a fight with me right there. And he's not even a big guy. I'm a 6'3", 240 pounds. I'm a big dude.
Right.
And I'm a fighter. I'm a scrapper. I've been fighting my whole life, in and out of the ring. And I'm thinking, maybe he wants to get noticed. Maybe he does want to end up on the internet. I don't know, because it wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
And we actually almost got into blows. And finally the cops stepped in, and they told him to get lost. And he was screaming and yelling and said, I'm going to come back. I'm coming back. This isn't the end of it. So the rest of that whole afternoon, that evening, the cops had to surround me. Anytime I went to my trailer, I had to wait for like 2 or 3 cops to lead me across the street to my dressing room and then back out to the set again. We did that all afternoon.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was the first time in my life where I felt threatened. Not because of this guy, but, he may return with a gun.
That's what I would worry about.
Right.
I mean,
who knows?
Crazy fans, right.
Crazy fans. And I went, wow. And that was actually my first encounter with like a really bizarre fan encounter. And I went, because usually people are pretty cool. And I think the other one that kind of sticks out is I remember when I did The Babe, I was relatively young. I was new at it all. And we had a set publicist that was there. There was a bunch of these extras had come over, and there was about 5 or 6, and some of them were pretty attractive and stuff. And they had come over, and they wanted to take pictures with me, and like kissing me on the cheek, and you know, and wrapping their arms around me, and one wanted to sit on my shoulders and all this stuff. And I'm over there eating it up because I'm a young man, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great, although I'm a young married man. And so the publicist comes running over, and he's screaming at me, waving his arms, and he read me the riot act right there in front of all these extras. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just taking pictures with the fans here and stuff." He goes, "No, no, 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 no." And he bawled them all out. He said, "Go back to your seats. This is wrong. I'm going to come by and get all your film from you." And, you know, this is before even cell phones back then. And he made this big deal out of it. And I said, "What was that all about, man? I thought we were supposed to be friendly." And he goes, "Michael, you don't know where those pictures are going to end up. What if your wife sees you with some 2 or 3 girls hanging on you and kissing on you and stuff? How is that going to make her feel? What if that gets out there in a magazine somewhere or something?" And I thought, oh, God, I didn't even think about that. It was a lesson that, so a lot of times this stuff can be used out of context, and it can
even
get
more
you in
so.
trouble.
Yeah, even more so today, because think of them selling it to a TMZ or trying to make a buck off of it, or just I cannot even imagine like an actor letting anybody do that because of the repercussions that could happen.
They'll catch stuff on you involuntarily when you're out and about. Well, how much more so are they going to use stuff that looks like you're posing for it and whatnot? You know what I mean? I remember I went on a motorcycle ride with a bunch of guys, friends of mine, and they wanted to go into a topless bar and hang out. And I was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And they're like, come on. And that was the only way I had to sit that one out. And they were getting really angry with me that I wouldn't go in there with them. I said, 1, I'm married, and this isn't my form of entertainment. 2, I'm too old. I'll probably clear the place out. And 3, I look like a cop, and I'll definitely clear it out. And 4, I said, guys, if anybody has a cell phone and takes a picture of me in there, I'm done. And they were like, oh, yeah, we didn't think about that. So
you just want to have a good time.
Right, if you're going to a topless bar, that's really not the first thing you're thinking about.
Exactly, you know, but as an actor and as a public figure, these are things you have to think about. You have to be proactive, and it's always a catch-22. There's that fine line. If you want to be there for the fans and you want to interact with them, but you have to be really protective and cautious and aware and very alert, very present in terms of what you do, when you do it, who you do it with, all those things, because you really don't know what's going to be taken out of context and exploited and used against you. We see it all the time. I mean, recently there was a hack where a bunch of nude pictures of actresses were sent out.
Right.
And it's like, God, you can't, you know. So it's really becoming harder, I think, for celebrities and actors and dancers, singers, whatever, to really interact with their fans without some knucklehead deciding that he wants to be famous or wants to make some money and put stuff out there that's going to put you in a bad light or embarrass you or whatever, and they're going to try to extort you, you know. And so, yeah, it's getting harder and harder, I think, to be a celebrity today. Even though technology's made it easier for us, I think because of that, it's a two-edged sword. It's also made it harder for us.
Right, and more challenging, certainly, to make sure you're always presented in a good light, because you don't always have control over the content that's being put out there.
You don't. And I got 3 kids who I love and adore and have a lot of respect for me, and I'm always worried about what they're going to see or hear, or, you know, and it's like, oh, man. So I guess I'm better off just crawling under a rock and not coming out.
So I actually would like to talk about one of your kids. So I'm going to give you a little insight. I grew up in a very small town in a strawberry farm, and my father was like very famous in town. Everybody knew who he was. And so I was always Roger's daughter. And then as I got older and got more established in my career, my father ended up being Elizabeth's father when we showed places. So I want to talk a little bit about Hunter. And do you feel that you now get to be Hunter's dad, or do you get to have your own credits, or do you just get to be Hunter's dad?
Well, it's funny. We joke about that, actually. I still joke about it with her all the time. We were just recently on a a home and family show on Hallmark, and she actually was in the audience because she was in town recently visiting family with her boyfriend, and they asked her to come up on stage with me, so we got to share that moment together, which was actually kind of fun. And then afterwards, I says, I just can't get away from you. I says, I'm going to be under your shadow for the rest of my life. You're Hunter McGrady, the model, the swimsuit model from SI, and that's that.
Right.
And we laugh, but I'm at a place in my career I could care less. It's like I keep telling, I go, God, if I could, I'd bring you to every premiere I go to, every party I go to, and put you right up on the pedestal and let you shine. I've had my moments, I've had my 15 minutes, and I continue to have it. And gosh, when it comes to your kids, you don't care.
I was just about to say, you sound like a very proud daddy.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of her. She's worked very hard to get where she is, and it's something she's wanted to do for so many years. I mean, you look at pictures of Hunter when she's 2 and 3 years old, and she's posing for the pictures and posing like a pro. And because her mom, my ex-wife, was a model. Her grandmother was a model, so she kind of grew up looking at photographs and old pictures and stuff and Z cards and. So she kind of mimicked all that, and she kind of knew what she wanted to do, and we allowed her to do that. She even took independent studies in high school, didn't even go to a normal high school experience because she wanted to model, and she signed with Wilhelmina, and it's been sort of a really great ride for her. She's really enjoying it and having a great time. So to watch her pursue that path and that dream like I did when I was younger. And again, the doors opened up, and I told her the same thing. I said, "Don't say no to every door just because it's uncomfortable, or you're not familiar with it. Because sometimes those are the doors that open up the big doors into places you really want to go and need to go in your life." So she's done that. She's applied that. And I think that's a lot of the reason why she is where she is. See, I'm taking credit. I'll give her that 15 minutes. I'm going to take credit for it.
Oh, that's cool.
So I just wanted to go back a little bit about your experiences with some other celebrities, because you've worked with one of my favorites, Kiefer Sutherland, and you did a handful of episodes of 24. So I'm sure you have some experience with him a little bit.
Yes.
So is he as cool off camera as he is on camera? Because he's really cool on camera.
Yeah, he is pretty cool. Kiefer's a pretty nice guy. He's a veteran, been around a long time and since he was a young man and really knows what he's doing in front of the camera. Off camera, yeah, very approachable. It's interesting because most of my scenes were with Cuthbert, Elizabeth Cuthbert, I think her name was, the girl who played the daughter. Most of my scenes were with her, but I did end up having one scene with Kiefer, and I think, if I remember correctly, and maybe it was just one, but we hit it off great. Of course, I remember him from everyone. His movie career, of course, he was one of the biggies. Along with Charlie Sheen and Emilio and all those guys. So I'd kind of grown up watching him, and he's kind of in there he's part of my peer group. But to work with him on that show, and that show was such a big deal. It was the Breaking Bad of its day, and it was a show that everybody wanted to get on. All the actors wanted to work that show because it was Kiefer and because it was such a big deal. It was groundbreaking in the way they were shooting it and how they were presenting it and stuff. So. Yeah, it was a big deal, man. He's cool. He's a cool cat.
Are you watching the new show, Designated Survivor? From Kiefer?
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes. It's funny. I hate to say this. I'm actually always embarrassed to say this. I don't watch a lot of TV. I watch a handful of shows here and there. I record a lot of stuff, and then I'll sit down and binge watch it, my wife and I. A lot of times when we go up to Vancouver to shoot Beyond, the very first 6 weeks or so when we're up there, it's raining a lot up there. So we find ourselves catching up on a lot of TV, and I love, of course, Game of Thrones. That's a no-brainer. House of Cards. I love Taboo. I recently started watching Ozark. I watch a lot of the cable stuff that's out there. I think the cable is just where it's at. So a lot of the network stuff, I don't watch a lot of it. And there's actually, believe it or not, people can't believe this, but it's true. And there's a lot of shows I've been on I've never seen.
That's what I wondered, and that I was going to lead into this question later, but it's appropriate now. When you film an episode of any of your series, are you watching them? I mean, do you critique how it was done? You know what the shots were like at the time, but did they get edited the way you thought? And what's it like watching yourself? Never.
They never edit it the way I would edit it. Which is mostly me and none of the other person.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's all about me.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about me. It's that's an old joke, right? The actor looking through their script going, bullshit, 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 my line, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. But no, it's funny. I'm not one of these actors that hates seeing themselves. I'm not that. I mean, maybe when I was younger, I tried to play that role, but I thought that's kind of silly. This is your work, and if you're not proud of what you do and you're that, hypersensitive, maybe you may try to find a new line of work. But I don't mind watching myself on TV. A lot of times I'll miss episodes simply because I just didn't catch them or forgot to record them or something like that. But when I'm on a show like the series, though, I will watch a few episodes to get a feel for where the show is going, the tone of the show, how they are editing it and stuff like that, and how the directors are moving the camera around and lighting to, all that stuff's informative for an actor. But I won't necessarily sit down and watch every episode. Like I was in Southland. I didn't watch all those episodes. I watched a handful that I was in, but not all of the ones I was in. I don't know. It's funny. I know some actors who sit down and invite friends and family over in the neighborhood, and they'll have popcorn and watch every single thing they're in. And I don't know, I guess I'm a little more of a loner than that, a little more private than that, I figure, for me too, the process is what's fun. I love the process. I love actually doing it and shooting and being there. That's fun for me. Watching it is somewhat anticlimactic sometimes.
You're like, the fun was already had.
Been there, seen it, done it.
Yeah, been there, seen it. I've already done that. I've seen that, My wife actually, she would probably say something different though, because I remember not too long ago, we were watching something that I was in, and I was really critical of it. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you ever just enjoy these?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I enjoy them. I watch them." I said, "You got to remember, though, I was there." And so sometimes I will see a sequence where I think, they didn't use that take. Man, they had a better take than that, or a better angle, or, though the music isn't right. Or it's, because, as an actor, I'm kind of an armchair director, too. It's something I'm aspiring to right now, and to get behind the camera a little bit. And I've written a couple screenplays. Of course, what actor hasn't? And, everybody in Hollywood's written a screenplay. But so I have a tendency to watch things from a directorial point of view, and I don't always agree with what they're using. But then, I'm biased, too. They're always looking at the bigger picture very objectively, where I'm a little more probably too subjective in my critique.
In 2016, you were in the People vs. O.J. Simpson. You played Detective Van Adder. And I did want to talk about that because I learned a lot because I was fascinated with watching the whole thing. Of course, we grew up there. You lived in L.A. during that time, I would assume.
Yes, absolutely. I remember it very distinctly.
So was it weird, like, recreating this trial for television 20 years later?
It wasn't weird. It was weird in that it brought back a lot of memories, because that was a big deal. I mean, that really kind of changed TV. In my estimation, you can almost sort of say it was a genesis of reality TV.
Right.
Where you actually saw something live with a celebrity in it, and you were watching this thing unfold. This was a star name, not just as a TV star and film star, but as an athlete. And people were just really magnetized to this thing, And when you think about it now we have like Cops and all these different reality shows that are out there and whatnot. And I can't think of anything before that was televised in the way that was and covered in court and everything that, we would consider maybe the precursor to what we experience today on TV with reality TV. I did a lot of research for it, I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jeffrey Toobin's book is a slog. I mean, it's a thick, very thick book. I mean, you think War and Peace is something, but this thing is thick, and it's just chock full of facts and information. And that was I went out immediately and got that book. when I got the role offered to me. And I started reading it. I actually found out a lot of information that the general public didn't have any access to. And even today, they probably have no idea unless they've read his book. They only hung on to what was, piecemealed out during the day at the time. But there was a lot of facts and figures and information stuff that had come out in his book and in the film, too, that we were not privy to back then. I found a lot of that information fascinating. We'd even seen some letters that he had written and cards, birthday cards and stuff, and I was shocked that there was the penmanship was not really on par with someone of his age and with a USC background and whatnot, and the vernacular and the syntax, everything was almost adolescent in a sense. And I found that shocking, actually. And then I watched a lot of tape. I watched a lot of film on Van Atter, trying to pick up some of his mannerisms. I've had the good fortune of playing a lot of real people in my career, and anytime I do that, I always immediately have a sense of duty and responsibility to depict them as closely as I can without making some kind of a weird commentary on them or a caricature. I try to do it in a responsible manner so that I give the essence of the person without, mimicking them. And when you mimic, sometimes it comes off a little cheesy and sometimes disrespectful. Because there's a tendency to want to highlight the idiosyncrasies that really stand out, and almost to a point where it's too much, and you overplay it. The guy's a drunk. Everybody plays a drunk, really drunk. Well, how many drunks do you see walking around looking like drunks? If anything, they're trying to keep their body upright and straight and talk normal, and it's the same thing. So I wanted to really give that some respect. Because he just passed away not too long ago. And interestingly enough, actually, his daughter reached out to me on Facebook. And when she had found out I was doing the film, and we had some interaction back and forth on Facebook. I actually spelt his name wrong in one post, I think it was. I think that's how maybe she got a hold of me, and she corrected me on how the name was spelled. And so got some information from her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then I actually spoke to some detectives who I knew at LAPD from Southland when I worked on Southland, who knew him personally. So I was able to amass a lot of information on him, and even with makeup and hair, we talked, and I put on a little bit of extra weight for the role because I was doing Beyond concurrently as well, the pilot, and so it was kind of hard to really be him completely, but I did the best I could without compromising the other shows I was working on. In fact, I think I was working on 3 other shows at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
And, flying back and forth to LA and Vancouver and stuff. But at the end of the day, when I saw the product, I was really very happy with it. I was happy with the show. And obviously a lot of people work, so it won some awards and whatnot, but I liked my work in it. I think I did a pretty good job, a respectable job of demonstrating or displaying him and what he was all about. Of course, he was even much more integral to that process than what you see on the series, the limited series that they did. He was very involved.
But the cast was not allowed to visit or meet with the person they were playing while the filming was taking place, right?
No. They were pretty strict about that. In fact, they were strict about a lot of things. I mean, even when we went from the dressing room to the set, they had us with umbrellas and so that people couldn't see us, and we were always behind partitions, and they were always blocking off the filming, and I mean, they were really trying to do everything undercover best they could. And yeah, we were very limited in terms of who we could speak with and talk to and stuff like that. Of course, Philip Van Atter had passed away before we even started shooting, but I certainly got a lot of information from a lot of people that knew him very, very well. So that's always helpful.
And they filmed multiple episodes on the same day, right? So they would have different directors working, the same day of filming. So was it different? Was it hard being directed by different people with maybe different styles throughout the same day?
I can't speak for the other actors, but for me, it wasn't difficult. Again, at the time, I was working 3 other shows at the same time. So I was working with Frank Darabont on a show at the time, and I was working with 2 other different directors for other shows. I mean, Ray Donovan. I was going back and forth while we were doing that. So there was, for me, I was working with different directors almost every week. So it was kind of maybe my situation was unique, but I found it pretty easy. And my process doesn't change as an actor with respect to the director or whatever. I'm very clear on what my role and my goals are for the day and for the scene and whatnot. So, and it's interesting because you do work with different directors and they do have different styles and different ways and whatnot. But I've been working so long for so many years that I can adapt to anybody's style. There's some directors that are very hands-on and love to work with actors, and they know actors speak and all that, and they get involved in performance and whatnot. And then there are some directors that don't even say a word to you, really. They leave you alone, let you do your thing, and they're more concerned with the technical aspects of filmmaking and moving the camera and things like that. And they spend most of their time with their camera crew. And so you as an actor, you do have to learn how to adapt to all those different styles. And you got one extreme to the other.
Well, I was going to ask you, when you're doing so many different projects all at once, how do you keep them straight?
Boy, that's a good question, Elizabeth. For me, I actually, the 2 or 3 times I've had to do this where I was working on multiple projects, I actually keep a journal. Like I'll sit down and sort of with my homework, I'll sort of plot out bullet point the things that are important to me and with respect to the work, the scene, character reveal, all those different things. And I actually use that journal. I'll use it to sort of guide me. It's sort of like a compass. I'll just go to that journal, and at the end of the day, sometimes I'll write in that journal what I did that day and what I experienced and how the scene ended up and whatnot, so that the next time I go in, I'll just jump back to that journal and I'll refer back to it and be able to get my bearings pretty quickly.
Well, I want to finish the interview with balance. It seems like you have totally figured out how to have not only a career but a balanced life. Because I have a friend in the DGA, and she has very late calls with very early mornings where I'm like, why didn't you just sleep there? It would have been much easier to not travel home. But somehow, you found time to have tons of hobbies. You're an artist, you're in a band, you enjoy being on the water and riding your motorcycle and doing karate and all those things. So how do you find this time to do all these things?
At a relatively young age, I had a very strong idea as to what my values were, what was important to me, and I started at that young age. I think it had something to do with the cancer scare and everything. I started living my life less by the clock and more by a compass. It wasn't important to me how fast I was getting somewhere, but more importantly to me was why and where I was going. And why I was going in that direction, whatever it was. So I got very clear on the reality that we all have 24 hours out of the day. And, some people do nothing with those 24 hours or relatively nothing. And then some people just fill every minute with activity and whatever. And I've always tried to strike that balance. My acting career, thankfully, has allowed me a lot of opportunities, a lot of time. When I work, I'd make enough money to be able to not work for a period of time and then pursue some of my hobbies and things like that. But I got to be honest with you, it hasn't come without sacrifice. I've actually turned down a couple of series when I was younger. I had 2 different series that were offered to me in my lifetime up to this point, that one of them even was Aaron Spelling. And it was when I was kind of on the come, I was on the rise a little bit, and they offered me a series, and they were going to throw all sorts of money at me. And at the time, I just bought a house, and we just had our second child, and they were asking me to move to another country to do this series.
Are you going to tell us what it was? Do we get to find out?
I'm not going to. What's that?
I said, do we get to find out?
Yeah, let's just say it was another series.
Okay.
So, anyways, long story short was because I don't want to take anything away from the guy that did end up getting it and doing the show and everything, but It was not a hard decision for me, but boy, it pissed off a lot of people to the end that my agents at the time dropped me. My manager dropped me. They said I wasn't a team player and that I was letting them down. And, I was supposed to be in business to make money for everybody and this and that. And I said, look, bottom line, I don't want to work 16-hour days. I don't want to work 5 days a week every day. I want to raise my kids. I don't want nannies raising them. I want to coach them in sports. I don't want to give up the home I just bought and started fixing up and stuff. And I've done that. And money has never been my motivator. I've known people with a ton of money that were very miserable human beings because the other aspects of their lives weren't working. And so when I noticed that, I started to really pay attention. I schooled on those people, and I made a decision, like I said, at a young age. I think it has something to do with the cancer scare, where I said, the money's great, but it certainly doesn't buy happiness, because I know people with a lot of money, and they're not happy people. So fulfillment was a big deal to me, and doing the things that had a heart to it, had passion, that I had a passion for, and so I would turn down stuff so I could pursue my other hobbies and other avocations. Like painting is not a hobby, it's an avocation. I make money on that. I'm in galleries and I sell. The band is a hobby, but there's certainly other things I've done. I've had businesses and over the years too that were avocations, and so I've always tried to make time for that. And my number one priority has always been my family, my kids. We're making sure that I was going to be home and raising them, and I wouldn't take certain jobs because I knew that the family would suffer. I wouldn't be around. And then eventually, ultimately, I think I would have suffered because I love being a dad. And when I had kids, I was thrilled to have them and knew I wanted to spend as much time as I could with them. And
you can't get those memories back like when they're little.
No, you can't. And I tell you, I think I was very lucky because I ran into a lot of people at a young age that would tell me that. They would, some of these stars I was talking about, these legendary stars would tell me these stories about, I would ask them, do you have any regrets? And the one that kept coming up is, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, my kids, and I heard that was like a recurring theme. And so I thought, there's got to be some truth to that, because everyone I talked to who's made it big says the same thing.
Yeah, let's learn from this mistake.
So for me, I just knew that, my career is so important. It's very important. But when I pursued this, I pursued it with the knowledge that I may never make a dime at it, and that I might have to do something else in order to support my acting habit. And I was willing to do that. Of course, I was younger and didn't have all the responsibilities. But even as I got older, I started feeling the same way. I thought, well, I'll become an artist then, and I'll go work somewhere. And I've worked jobs. I was a logger. I worked in steel mills. I've worked hard labor jobs before, and I've worked in a bank. I've done a lot of things. So I always figured, well, if it ever came down to me sacrificing my kids and my family and spending time with them over acting, I would do it willingly, and I've done it. I still wouldn't do it differently. I would not do it differently. To this day, I would do it all the same.
Yeah, totally worth it.
Totally worth it. Now they're grown up, and I'm very tight with them, very close to them, and thank God I haven't had a lot of the struggles that some of my friends have had. And that's not because they weren't around, but for different reasons. My kids are all pretty squared away and pursuing their dreams and doing well in life and thriving, not just surviving. And that's kind of a cool thing for me to watch. And I'd like to think it was because I was here and spent a lot of time with them and had a lot of influence in their lives and stuff. And they've seen me struggle. They've seen me pursue my dreams and the things that I wanted to do and pursue my hobbies. I know recently my son, we were up in Vancouver. He came up to visit us before he had to go back to college for his second year. And we took him whitewater rafting, ATVing. We did all these really cool things. And I said, there was a time you wouldn't be interested in all this stuff because, I kind of want to do like what you've done. I want to do a lot of different things in my lifetime. And I was such a shock to hear that. And it was actually kind of made me feel like, oh, wow. So he's 19 and that influence is now coming into fruition.
See, that's a job well done.
I hope so. I mean, we'll see. The jury's still out. They're still young.
So the last thing, Beyond is returning for season 2. January of 2018 to Freeform. And
yes.
Have you started filming for that yet, or are you heading to Vancouver soon?
We're finished. We just finished about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, the entire season.
And yeah, the entire season. We shot 10 again this season, like we did the first season. And we started in April.
Okay.
And ended in about towards the end of August. I think I was done like about maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks before they ended the show. But I'm actually really excited about the second season. I think the first season was excellent. It was a great introduction to the show, but I think the second time around, we even have an even more greater grasp on what this show is, what the fans really enjoyed about the first season. So we gave them more of that and less of other things that maybe they didn't respond to like we thought they might. So I think we're getting very clear on what our product is and what who our demographic is, and then trying to make that relationship more solidified. I think we did a good job of it. I mean, I enjoyed reading a lot of the scripts this year, and I don't do a lot on the show. I mean, that's kind of part of my deal. It's kind of one of the reasons I like doing this show is I go in and I do 1 or 2 scenes an episode, and which usually are shot within one day, maybe 2 max, and then the rest of the week I'm free to check out Vancouver. My wife and I kayak and we snow ski and play. It's just really
that's a good gig.
Every day.
It's a great gig.
It is. It's a great gig, and I keep telling my wife, I go, please don't let me get spoiled on this. Don't let me eat it up, because the next one may not be so cool. It may not be like this. And I work with a great bunch of people. The Vancouver crew is just golden. I love them all. They're hard workers, and Vancouver is the new Hollywood North. There's over 50, 60 productions being done there. So they're just pumping them out, and these crews just go from one show to another. I mean, I think practically all the CW shows are shot there. So you're getting these people that are working constantly, so they get up to speed pretty quickly. They jump from one show to another. There's not a big, tall, long learning curve. They jump right in and know exactly what's required of them, and they
it makes
do
production go fast.
Oh, and much faster,
yeah.
And it's which makes it much more fun for us. And nobody's stressed out, nobody's nervous. Everybody gets, everybody. It's a pretty light-hearted, relaxed atmosphere, so everybody's able to do their best work. Anytime you're doing something artsy or creative, you got to take risks, and you want to take risks with people that have your back. That there's a net there, if you will, and rather than trying to do all sorts of acrobatics without a net, you'd rather do them with a net. And a good crew is critical to that side of the process. And then, of course, I think the show in general it's unique. It's so many different shows thrown into one. It's everybody's favorite movies and shows. I mean, it's Heroes, it's Lost, it's Hunger Games. It's all these different shows or little amalgamation.
Yeah, it made me think of 4400, Resurrection, those kind of shows.
Yep, exactly. And I think we're doing it well. I think we're doing it well every year. I think the production value has definitely stepped up this year. I mean, some of the stunts that our lead had to do, they had to build this huge contraption. I can't get into it for one of the scenes. I was like, God, we have that kind of money to do that? So, you don't know why I don't have a parking spot.
Well, we're excited to see the season return, and I just want to thank you so much for joining us on this very first podcast. It was very entertaining. I was very excited to answer, get some burning questions answered, and just get more detail into what your real life is like working on a set. And I think you helped us with that.
Well, I hope it was enjoyable. I hope it was informative. You guys did a great job. You have great questions, man. Seriously, those are really great questions, and I had fun. I've done a few of these, and I have to say this is one of the more relaxing ones.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that.
So before we let you go, where can we got to get your followers higher than Hunter's? One of my questions was how's Thanksgiving, because she's got more followers than you. So hopefully we can boost this up. So
are you kidding me? I have no followers. I'm still fighting and losing the same 3 followers the past 6 months.
Well, Nick and I will come on over and give you 2 more.
I need some followers. I'm telling you, my kids and I laugh about that because I haven't done social media, but when I contracted to do Beyond, that was one of the things that they required, that we really become more, social conscious in terms of the social media platforms and stuff. I don't even think I had an Instagram account when I got the show. And so my kids helped me to get all this stuff pulled together, and I laugh now because they keep telling me, "Dad, you can't post that. That's dumb. Take that off." Oh, okay, delete.
But I thought it was cool.
That's cool. Post that. And I keep telling them, guys, it doesn't make any difference. There are 3 people that keep blocking me and then following me. And I'm not picking up any more than those 3 people. And it's become this war with me and these 3 people. I don't know who they are. You know what I mean? But, so anyways, yeah, I'm at Michael McGrady, Michael _ McGrady at Twitter. And I'm, of course, verified. And on Instagram, Michael McGrady. Verified there as well, and then Facebook is my name. It's pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, those are only 3 social media platforms that I'm on: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Fantastic.
Good enough. You can find us on Facebook if you search Fan Counters, and you can also email us at hello@fancounters.com. And soon, probably by this airing, there'll be a website as well. So we're getting that all worked out as we speak.
And we really do appreciate you being our first guest.
It was my pleasure, guys. Thank you. And good luck to you, and best of fortune. And I hope it's a huge success for you because you're both very good at it.
Thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.
You guys do the same. Take care now.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.